Hi, welcome to Nothing Ventured, Nothing Game. I'm your host with the most, your GM Jared. And today on this channel, we will be doing a general overview of the new book from Paizo, Secrets of Magic. So stick around, sit back, relax, and get ready to listen to two big guys talk about books. Hi, and welcome back. So, we're talking about Secrets of Magic, and this book just came out maybe a week ago, give or take, sometime, depending on when you're listening to this. So, Secrets of Magic is from Paizo, and the super short elevator pitch is this book expands magic, spells specifically, gives you two new classes, the Magus and Summoner, and additionally creates a number of archetypes, right? Like new archetypes for you to dedicate into.
Also, new magic items, new types of magic items.
New types of magic items. So if you're interested in adding more magical items, more spells into your game, if you're looking to play the Magus or the Summoner, if you're interested in actually learning about how magic works and its relation to everything in the universe, because one of the big questions I always get is like, how does magic work? Oh, or the hand wave. Oh, it's just magic. Pick this book up because it talks about magic and how everyone views magic or general view of magic. No. So with all that being said, we're just going to jump into a general overview. And this is just an overview. We're going to get into a deep dive of the classes later because we really want to talk about the classes. So we're going to start with the Essentials of Magic, which is in chapter 1.
Yeah, that's
right?
chapter 1.
Chapter 1. The Essential of Magic is basically, it talks about magic. And there's no better way to put that. It just talks about magic. It talks about the traditions of magic, how magic is viewed in this world. And one of the cool things I like about the Essentials of Magic book is it talks about the 8 schools of magic: abjuration, evocation, all that stuff. But when you read about them, like if you're reading conjuration, they tell you what conjuration is, how it works, how the other spheres of magic interact with it. And additionally, it gives you a really cool thing where it tells you like the season of conjuration, which in this version is spring. The animal associated with conjuration is a spider, and in Pathfinder universe and in the Paizo universe, there's something called the Harrower's deck, and it's kind of like the tarot cards or the Taroka cards from D&D, and they tell you the cards associated with conjuration, which in this is the midwife and the peacock. And lastly, it tells you kind of like the colors of conjuration, which is crimson and gold. So if you're building a character, let's say you're building a wizard about conjuration, you might make your staff this beautiful crimson like wood, and then it's etched with arcane runes in gold. And then that's how other wizards might recognize you. Now, Steve wanted to touch on other things, so I'm going to throw it over to Steve because I can only talk so much.
So in the book, right actually before the section that Jared was talking about, where it describes the 8 schools of magic and how they're viewed, basically it looks like there were excerpts out of magic users' journals that were actually put in place as if it was written in a real book, and that page was ripped out and placed in Secrets of Magic. And they're all from different points of view from different people. So the first one, I believe, is from an arcane caster, probably a wizard, as being like a teacher in a school and how they would teach magic to their students and how they should view magic and the dangers that they could run into while teaching magic. But then a couple excerpts later, there's a person that's talking about how divine magic works and how that the faith is orientated and how the divine beings grant power, and just the different perspectives and points of view on how the different 4 traditions, the arcane, the occult, divine, and the primal, all view magic and how they all access their power and just their opinions on it, which I thought was a really cool lore piece added into it.
Yeah, I really do like that. To just bounce onto what you're saying, I really do like that because we always talk about how, you want to educate people in role play. And this is a great way, teaching tool to like show players like how they could role play. They touched on a level of whimsy in a book of rules, right? And I think we need more of that, especially in rule books. Also, the artwork is
we haven't even gotten to the artwork yet. We'll get there in a second. But just like some of the excerpts are like, there are some from the perspective of the person who wrote this excerpt is how magic is viewed from an arcane standpoint. And it says that, like, in their opinion, there's actually no magic. You can't actually create any new magic. It's just been magic that's been forgotten. And you're not actually creating it. You're just discovering it. And eventually we'll discover all the magic. And that'll be it.
That's rude.
This is lore. But I feel that I've read lore books before where it's a lot of lore and a little bit of character options. I feel that this is probably one of the most useful lore pieces for player and GM that I've seen. There's sometimes where you read about a town. I'm like, well, if I never go there, or if I read about some named person, I never meet the named person, it may be important lore, but it may not be important to my character. It may not be important to our game.
Mm-hmm.
This, if anyone casts spells, or even if you come across magic users, maybe you have a whole party of melee people.
You could do it.
But you're still going to run into magic items. You're still going to run into people who use magic. And you're going to hire that cleric to res your friend because he's got, like eaten by the dragon. So you're still going to interact with this at some point, and everyone's going to have an opinion on magic. And this, I think, is very useful lore just to have people have a base understanding of not just how mechanically magic works, but how one magic user may think about another magic user because they use magic differently.
And this is something I love about Paizo. Paizo's every class has an iconic character. And sometimes they change. They introduce the iconics before the class. And they say, hey, this is the iconic for this class. And they give you a brief summary of the character and who they are and what makes them the iconic to this class. Mm-hmm. And I think that was something really well done. And it gets you invested in the class a little bit because you're like, oh, and it might inspire, maybe you're like, oh, I want to play a Magus, but I'm not 100% sure how to play a Magus. So what should I do? And then they're like, boom, this is the iconic. Maybe you want to play like this iconic. So that's really cool. I like that. I think they're mixing that whimsy of lore
mm-hmm.
in the reality of the book. So like, this is how you would maybe play this class. You don't have to, but it's an option, right?
The other thing that is interesting, because both of these classes are a little advanced. And we went through this in our talk about it in kind of our general overview, but they actually give, which is quite interesting, it's a little blurb of how you might use your abilities in combat.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in combat, having to juggle all these different things, like I have to attack and I want to cast a spell, and I have this brand new ability called Spell Strike, which lets me attack and cast spells. They go in through and give you kind of a little blurb of this is how you might want to play, or just give you a couple of like suggestions of tactics, which this is the first time they've ever done that. So it's a nice little helpful sidebar that will be useful for new players who are picking up Magus for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. A lot of people talk about the 3-action system, and we could do a whole video on 3-action system. It's a very common thing. It's a new way of playing, right? It kind of breaks the mold. And a lot of people are playing martial classes and they're like, hey, I've attacked twice and now I'm stumped on what to do. They kind of talk about like what you can do with your 3 actions just besides attacking as a martial class. And since you are a hybrid caster martial, all in all, the class stuff here I feel is very solid. It's all solidly built. They talk about the new iconics, or the old iconic and the new iconic summoner. And they go into detail. And with all classes, like you said, they tell you, hey, this is an optional, build if you just want to build something, and also how you might want to play this class, which never bad. Yeah, like with the summoner, you have, because here's the thing,
the sharing actions.
Yeah, does a lot on action economy with the summoner, because unlike the other classes, the summoner's summon friend, your Eidolon, is
not a minion.
Not a minion. It doesn't have the minion trait. It is in itself an extension of your character. And that's actually part of the class. You share a hit point pool. I'll get into that later in our grand overview of the class. But they have like act together, which allows you to use action economy to have your summon either take 1 or 2 actions, and then you take 1 or 2 actions on top, and then that just doesn't eat your whole turn. That's just part of your turn, and that's at level 1. Because you have this companion that's always out or can always be out, you know, you have to really know how to it's controlling the field, and you got an extra person on the field that you could get flanking to. So there's a lot of ways to play the class again, using flanking, and you have spells, right? So you have a spell list on top of that. So you're casting spells, action economy. Okay, I just acted together. So I have 2 people I have my minion moving, and then I'm moving, and now I'm going to spend 2 actions. And it might seem like you have a lot to do on your turn, and you do, but again,
it's never enough.
It's never enough. And then of course you want the artwork in for the summoner, you know, because we talked about Magus, and just I would check out the Eidolons. The Eidolons are all really cool. They explain what they are. So when you choose as a summoner, you choose the type of Eidolon you get. So like you could be angry, and your anger actually manifests into its own entity, or you could have a demon. One of them is a demon, and all the artwork looks really cool. It's badass. The angel and the angry Eidolon. So I think that's the anarchy symbol, by the way, on the shoulder.
Yes, it is.
Of the anger Eidolon.
I'm surprised it's not upside down.
Yeah, it's the angel looks terrifying. It's so abstract. It's like, it's cool and terrifying, because like if you put yourself into the character, right? Like so the only way to describe it is imagine like Mysterio's like fishbowl head.
It's true. It's actually true,
right? And then like it has this like celestial like ice body.
Yeah, it's very spiky.
It's all spiky, and then like imagine walking in and someone sitting there, and then that's like over their shoulder. It's just terrifying. And the angry one is cool. It looks like kind of like Conan the Barbarian, but with like the anarchy symbol on its.
And it's all red. It's not like a reddish person. No, it's all red.
It's just it looks like he's on fire.
It's like Red Hulk.
Yeah,
okay, let's put it that way. It looks like Red Hulk with a sword.
Yeah. It's pretty badass. Pick this book up if you love artwork.
Yeah. Then even the demon one, it literally looks like an enemy from Doom.
Yeah.
From the Doom video
games.
It's
awesome. So awesome.
Like fiery hooves and horns and
longsword.
Yeah. It's
badass.
We're talking about the artwork in the class section, but in all honesty, the artwork throughout the entire book is awesome. It really gives you a sense of what some of this stuff looks like, what can manifest when you start messing with certain types of magic. When we get to the spell section, some of the spells are like full page or almost full page descriptions of just here's a piece of artwork, and this is what happens when you blow up the world.
Yeah. And that's a perfect segue into the spell section of Secrets of Magic. And that's why you would pick up Secrets of Magic, because you want to add these spells to your game. And the first image is Linny, the druidess, summoning this giant, like it looks like a cherry blossom. And she's actually fighting. So these are demons. They are demons, like, and they
like bird demons.
Yeah, they're like bird demons. They look like vultures, and it's so awesome. It's so dramatic, and she looks so confident just summoning this like epic cherry blossom tree. And I think that kind of really explains what you're getting yourself into as a GM. So with the spells, you know, there's a ton of stuff, and again, they do that thing. They put in like these little excerpts from like pages of magic, and it looks like handwritten stuff. And again, it's mixing that whimsy of roleplay with lore with rules, which I think is really cool. There are a ton of spells. I mean, we could sit here for hours and hours talking about spells. But again, every page, beautiful splat work. You know, artwork on spells. They bring in the iconics and the character. Sometimes the pictures themselves tell a story, and you're like, I want to know what's happening in that picture. And you know, and then you're like, oh, what's all that? And then that might lead you to pick a spell because you saw something pretty cool. Yeah. Is there any spell you would specifically want to talk about, Steve, or anything you want to talk about? Because I there's just too many. I couldn't sit here.
I don't know if we're going to go into any specific spells, just because, like, I mean, there's even spells that were in the original Pathfinder First Edition that didn't make it over into the core rulebook. something like an iconic spell like Scorching Ray. So people who played First Edition, that was a bread and butter spell for a lot of spellcasters. Scorching Ray, just point your finger and a whole bunch of red rays come out and they just burn people. That wasn't the original game. That in Second Edition, they just didn't make it. In this book, it's in here. So they brought back Scorching Ray. So but they have like all like new things where they in the core rulebook they had things where you could turn into a dragon, but now they have it turn into fill in the blank. They have angel form, devil form, demon form, I think aberrant form. You can just turn into all these different creatures now. And then there's some of these more utility spells. Tina was talking about the cantrips, where like the social cue cantrip. What was it called?
Oh, I forgot what it was called. It's like read the room or something.
Read the room, yeah.
And your character just instantly understands like the social interactions that's going on. There's a lot of really cool things in here.
I will say we've seen other books, like we had Gods and Magic.
Gods and Magic.
We've had a number of other books. None of them ever had the amount of spells that this book has. Definitely. This book has a large chapter dedicated to the new spells. Yet again, now we have new focus spells, the conflict spells for the Magus, and the linked spells. I think it's linked spells, or tandem spells.
Tandem is a new
There's
ability.
new focus spells for the summoner as well, and the summoner also has special cantrips that they can do. Mm-hmm. The Magus didn't have any special cantrips specific to them. There's new rituals in here too.
Tons of new rituals.
So again, rituals, for those who don't know, rituals aren't actually magic. They're kind of magic, but they're based on skill checks. So people, even though you don't have magic ability, you can still participate in a ritual and make the appropriate skill check to mimic how magic works. There's certain rituals that you can have. So one of the, I'm not sure if you would consider it a shortcoming. I would say one of the shortcomings was there wasn't that many rituals in the core rulebook.
No, there was a small number of rituals in the core rulebook, and
they've grown a few.
They've grown, but now this really adds a lot more.
Yeah, there's a fair few from this book as well.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to say, talking about spells, and I think this is a great segue, is they've expanded. So they've added this thing now with all magical classes can be affected by this, or certain spell classes can be affected by this. But when you're building your character, you can choose like a sub archetype of that. So if you're a druid, and one of my biggest arguments for druids was, why don't they just all have magic, like elemental magic? Like there should just be a ton of elemental magic. And there was, but not a lot. And I always argued that druids kind of fell short on that. And that's something they have now, is you can literally just choose to use elemental magic. And that's its own section. And it talks about how you convert all your spells to just elemental magic. It says you have to be able to cast, there's rules to that. Mm-hmm. Another one is cathartic magic, which is magic based on feeling. Yeah. So like love, lust, rage, and stuff like that. So you might want to play a summoner that turns their magic, that's an anger summon, right? You're so angry you've summoned an Eldolon that's made out of rage, and then maybe you're a cathartic mage also. So you're just fueled by rage. You're just an angry person all the time. That'd be a cool dwarf. A summoner.
What was that barbarian ability? You're so angry you can see in the dark.
Yeah, this one's you're so angry you manifest magic.
So going on to that, we're going to skip past the items for a second, and we're going to talk about the section that Jared is talking about right now. If I can find the beginning of the damn section,
right there.
Okay. So this book introduces a lot of new stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things it introduces is class archetypes. And what a class archetype is, at a first level, you have to pick an archetype. Now, the archetypes all have different restrictions. I don't know if they're all rare, but I know a decent number of them are. So this is something you talk to your GM saying, hey, I'm interested in picking up, lane line magic or pervasive magic, or I want to be a Thessalonian rune mage, which is basically, I want to be a rune lord. Which they're not nice people.
Yeah.
But at first level, each one of them has requirements. Like the Rune Lord, you have to be a specialized wizard. So you can't be any other class. You have to be wizard. You have to be specialized in a school that is not divination. Once you pick that, then there are restrictions to some of these. So some of them, you were talking about one of the other ones, reduce the amount of spells you can cast per day, but you get to then take others. You
advanced, like you get more spells of a certain thing.
Yeah, so you can focus on one type of magic. I think it was the Wellspring Mage, where the Wellspring Mage, you didn't have to necessarily be a wizard, but you had to be able. You had to actually have a spell repertoire, which means you have to be a spontaneous caster.
Yep.
And then you lose some access to magic, but then you gain others later down the line, and they all have feats associated. They all have an archetype associated with it, which also have to take the specialization. So this is an idea that was originally from First Edition, where all the classes had archetypes. They didn't really bring that over to Second Edition until this book.
Yeah, and then just the ones you can like kind of grab and look at. You. So we talked about the Cathartic Mage. That's your emotional mage. Your Elementalist. I kind of feel like that name kind of tells you what it is, but it does elemental magic.
I think that one is specifically to being druid.
Yes.
Like I think you have to be a druid because that actually gives you a whole bunch of new druid feats you can pick from, and a whole new order.
Orders,
you can be
2 new orders.
Of.
Yeah. Flexible preparation, which was kind of like how you prepare your spells, but now you could change it. Geomancy, and that one's more about elemental magic. It's a lot of elemental magic. Ley lines, and again, this is why we recommend talking to your GM. Ley lines talk about, and that's its own section of lore about like how magic runs through the planet and how you need this. You could tap into that river or road of magic. You might be playing in a homebrew setting using Pathfinder Second Edition rules, and your GM's like, yeah, we're not doing that, dude. No. Pervasive magic, and that talks about how like there's magic everywhere and how it's in everything, and that's not so much a class thing. It kind of affects all classes with the pervasive magic. It's an overview. Shadow magic is you just use shadows. Then there's Thessalonian rune magic, true name, so that deals with like naming things like, oh, I know this name of the demon and such like that.
It's almost like Hellboy, where like to know Hellboy's true name is to gain power over
him. Exactly. Wellspring magic is very similar. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you might be in like multiple different systems. If you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, the wild magic, Wellspring magic is very similar to wild magic in that system. Or if you're looking to do something similar in your campaign, you could do the same thing. Soul Forged armaments and soul seeds are not so much magic or stuff like that. They're more based in items.
Oh, I was just reading Soul Seed, and this is like the little blurb in the first page here. Magically attach to a creature's soul, then grow into a breath of their magic in a similar fashion to relics. Yeah. So you can almost like creating a relic out of a soul.
Yeah, and it's a long-term thing. So it's nothing you're going to be doing in level 1 or level 2. It's a long-term thing. The Soul Forged armament, that one's pretty cool. If you've ever seen any anime, what was Sailor Moon or Guyver or even like He-Man, where like I have the power and he changes to He-Man and gets like that vest and or like Sailor Moon, she does her transformation. That's what Soul Forge armament is. You basically bind this armor or weapon or items and they disappear into an extra dimensional space, and then you're like, go Power Ranger, and then you get it. It just shows up, and it's so cool. It's a really cool system. I think it's one of the coolest systems. Obviously, it's nothing you could do at level 1 because you have the class restrictions, but if you want to give like archetype, like free archetype dedication, and someone can do it, I suggest doing it and literally just screaming out like go gadget or something.
The detriment is they have to have a corny catchphrase.
Yeah, that's the best. But think of it, you could totally RP corny catchphrase and now that's your character.
It's true.
So we're just gonna hop up to the new items that we kind of skipped over in the last section because I wanted to talk about the new class stuff. So the first new item on the list is Fulus, and this originates from our real world. It's from Taoism, and they talk about that in the book. There's a subsection on page We can tell you the real page. We're looking at the PDF, but the PDFs have page.
160.
On page 160, there's a little excerpt and explains to you about how Taoists use Fulus in the real world. In the fantasy world, this comes from Tian Sha. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, Tian Sha. And they work like talismans. If you know anything about talismans from Pathfinder, I'm speaking solely on Pathfinder here. Talisman, so it's a single shot use, but Fulus are different. And you have to affix a talisman, you have to affix a Fulu, but they do different things. And Steve could tell you more about what they do and kind of where they come from.
So there's two different types of how Fulu functions. Some of them function immediately after you affix it, and it has an instantaneous effect. Others have they act more like talismans, where you affix it and then some sort of trigger means you can activate the Fulu. So there are different types of Fulus, and some of them have a duration. So when you affix it, it lasts for a certain amount of time. So that, one of them, is a duration 1 week,
1 hour.
Yeah, duration 1 hour. So the effect immediately starts and it lasts for an hour. Or like I said, some of them are considered. They're also that you can have a Fulu talisman, which it again follows the rules of talisman. You affix it. This one is here is rebound Fulu. You affix it to your shield, and when you use your shield block reaction with a shield with this Fulu affixed, you get the benefit. You can choose to get the benefit of the Fulu. So there's multiple different types of Fulus and
how they work
and how they function.
Yeah. Another really cool aspect of the Fulu, I think, is it's a different aspect of playing. Instead of doing talismans, you might only do Fulus.
Mm-hmm.
And you can remove it. It allows you to kind of change the world. Like, let's say we were playing in Tian Sha, right? With Ruby Phoenix. I can now say, okay, we're using Fulus, right? Instead of regular talismans. And then allow the players to use those instead of that. That's really it. I mean, I really think the Fulus are cool. But now on to the next section. We're just going to scroll down real fast, and we're going to talk about the Grimoires, which are more jumping over there. You now get to Grimoires, which is more Western traditional based, and we've all seen Grimoire. You got your Necronomicon Ex Mortis. You have those books like that, and that's what the Grimoires are. These are magical items. They are already pre-named. So you have like the Book of Lingering Blaze, and it tells you it's a magical item. So it's an item level 10, that book. And then it tells you on activation once per day, it enhances your evocation spells. I think a grimoire is a great aspect because I know my wizards love making their own grimoires. So if my abjuration wizard wants to make their own grimoire, it's something they can work towards.
Yeah. So grimoires are by inherently spell books.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously only certain classes are going to be using spell books, but there's a variety of different ones. This is, like I said, you pick your spell book and then your spell book gives you some sort of innate power or boosts some of your magic.
Moving forward, you have magical tattoos. This is a new system. Actually, I retract that. That's not a new system. It's been out, hasn't been advanced. Secrets of Magic advances it. So they now just came out with a new skill that you could take if you have crafting, and that's you could be a tattooist. So you could tattoo magical tattoos, which is really cool. And then they've now expanded magical tattoos in the game. There are regular magical items. We're just going over the new stuff, the expanded stuff. They brought in like more swords, more armor, more this, more that, more runes. We're just going over the cool stuff. And now we are going into the personal staffs. So the personal staves. Potato. Yeah. So you could create your own personal one. This is really cool. There's a price range. They tell you how to create it. You have to have obviously magical crafting and XYZ. And then what spells you could put into it and the level of spells that go into it and how many spells they could cast. So most staff start at about 5th level.
Even if you want to be just like a staff mage, and there are already staves in the core rulebook, but none of them quite have the spells that you like, or none of them quite match with the style of play you're going to. Now you can make your own custom staff. And the last two, I believe, new types of items is spell catalysts and spell hearts.
So jumping into it, so Steve's going to talk about Spell Catalyst, and then I'm going to do my best explanation of what they are, because I haven't read them and Steve has. So Steve?
So spell catalysts are consumable items, and what they do is you use them as a component of your spell. Adding fire starter pellets to a fireball spell produces clinging flames that deal persistent fire damage to all who fail their saving throw. So normally fireball just does fire damage in an area and it's done. It's instantaneous and it doesn't have any persistent fire damage. If you add this level 5 item, well, it goes up higher than that too, but it starts at level 5. You just add this at the at the base version. You're going to do, for everyone who fails their save or critically fails their save, they're going to take 1d6 persistent fire damage until they put the flames out or they make their flat check to get not on fire. So that's not normally something fireball can do. You adding this little catalyst, it increases the effect of that spell. And there's a variety of different ones for all different types of spells.
Now jumping over the spell hearts, my quick and dirty, they are magical talismans, similar to the spell, the one we just talked about, but these don't stop working. Correct?
Correct. And the other benefit is that the benefits that the spell hearts give you change depending on how you affix it. Let's say we have the 5-weather wreath. If you attach it to armor, you get +1 bonus on acrobatics, and a resistance to falling damage. But if you attach it to your weapon, after you cast an air spell by activating the wreath, you can fly 5 feet in a single action, or you can fly 10 feet as a free action if the spell you cast wasn't a cantrip. And there's some other text here, but you attach it to your weapon, you don't get the plus to acrobatics, and you don't get the damage reduction from falling, but you get this whole other ability. So they'll list which things you can attach it to, and it'll list what kind of ability you get from attaching it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that's a cool thing.
Like having it do dual work, again, makes it really useful as a GM. Makes it really useful for me to come out with it and to use it and to give it to my players. Additionally, it opens up a whole bunch of options for later books, for splat books, for items in, if you've never got a Pathfinder Adventure Path in the back, they always give you the toolbox. They could throw in a new one of these spell hearts that's part of that adventure path, and you might never know about it. I might never know about it because we don't play it, but I could always Google it or buy that book. And now it's part of my homebrew. This is a great tool, utility for everyone. Great for the players, great for the GM. They knocked it out of the park with the artwork, with the lore that they intertwine in the story. Geez, I think this is one of my favorite books from even first edition to now. It's beautifully drawn artwork. The lore that they put in really resonates with the whole book, and just every aspect of this book kind of gets the gears turning to inspire the player, inspire the GM to just want to do this.
I will say that PDFs are useful. Right. Push on the show, PDFs are useful. You don't have to lug all these heavy books with you. This is the core rule book.
It's a D4
the Secrets of Magic is about half that size.
Yeah.
But I will say that Secrets of Magic is worth picking up both. You know, the book. Oh yeah. I will say that a lot. There will be some books that I will say, is the book really necessary? Could I just get the PDF? Mm-hmm. And some books that'll be true. I mean, even though every book we've seen so far, the artwork has been great, but do I really need a book that lists charts? For this one, it's the total package. I will say that if you are insistent on buying the PDF, which obviously we bought the PDF.
Yeah.
Well, we also bought the physical book, and I'm actually going to get my own copy, because it is that good.
So from all of us here at Nothing Venture, Nothing Game, I hope we inspired you to either go out and pick this book up, buy the PDF, or, buy it with your DM. It's a great Christmas gift, birthday gift.
Coming up at that time.
Generic holiday gift. Because honestly, it's a really great book. It's one of the better splat books that I think is very valuable. There's a lot in here that is valuable. Knowing how to make the grimoires, knowing how to make the specialized stabs for your players can work towards that, because players always want something to work towards. Cool. So thanks for watching, and check us out at our website, Nothing Ventured, Nothing Aimed, or nvngpodcast.com. That's nvngpodcast.com to catch up with our latest episodes on our podcast, our live play, or find out all the really cool things coming up. So from all of us here, have a good one. Bye.
Later.